Hi there, and welcome to my Hygge Crow. My name is Christina. I use she, her pronouns, and I am coming to you not live from Sacramento, California, where I live with my husband Joel and my chunky cat, Nissa, and eventually a baby. I am uh, over 9 months pregnant now, so 40 weeks and 5 days today. I'm probably going to be releasing this video later on, so we'll hopefully no longer be pregnant at that point in time. But if you're wondering why I'm pregnant in so many of my first few videos, that is why. So today's video, I want to talk about my 2023 knitting plans. I have a reasonably sized stash, I think. It's not huge, but it's definitely significant. And I do want to, I'm not doing a yarn no buy or an official stash down or anything like that, but I do want to knit intentionally from my stash. This year I have a number of projects that I bought yarn specifically for, and I also have a lot of thrifted yarn. I thrift a lot of yarn at thrift shops, first of all, at estate sales, and also I will buy some yarn on eBay, usually yarn lots, so that I can get a significant amount for larger projects, because most of the time at the thrift store it'll just be one ball here, one ball there. And I also occasionally will purchase yarn on Facebook Marketplace uh, in a D-stash or something along those lines. I keep glancing down here because I have all of my yarn not so beautifully arranged. So my plan is to go through, I believe, 15 projects that I am pretty sure that I will be casting on this year. Uh, who knows though? I I think most knitters find that the new patterns that come out or that you discover are very tempting, and you just have to buy yarn and cast on those, even though you've got yarn in your stash for other things. So, as I talk about the projects, I'm going to show you the yarn, and then I'm going to put it here in my big old basket, just so I can get a nice visual at the end of all the yarn that I'm going to be working with, and hopefully that will inspire me to actually knit from my stash instead of buying lots and lots of new yarn. All right, so how I'm gonna do this is I am going to be referring to my Ravelry page on my iPad, which I have here, and I'm going to take a screen recording so that um, you can follow along with me as I'm looking through at the projects that I am hoping to cast on and off this year. um, a little bit about how I personally use Ravelry. I know that it's kind of a funky website. I won't say app because if you're on Ravelry, you have to get third-party apps that will kind of talk to your Ravelry account, but it's a little funky. But I've got a system going on that I find really, really helpful for myself. I won't talk about it. Maybe I'll talk about it more in a future video, like exactly how I do everything. But right now, I just want to talk about my queue. So in my queue is where I keep any projects that I have yarn in my stash to knit that project with. So it's not necessarily in the order that I'm going to knit the things. And it's not necessarily like, oh, these are my absolute favorite patterns. It's just once I have yarn in my stash that I can knit that thing with, I will add it to my queue so I can keep track and have a record of, first of all, what I'm planning for my stashed yarn. And it's also a helpful reminder when I start itching to buy new yarn or looking at new patterns that I have so many patterns that I can already knit with the yarn that I do have. So I have, let's see, 34 things in my queue. Obviously, that is more things than I can knit in a year. I'm not planning on knitting all of them, and they won't all remain. My queue is a little bit fluid, and it will change if I have a yarn assigned to something. That doesn't necessarily mean that I won't reassign that yarn to something else if there's something else that I end up liking better at a later time. So all that to say, this isn't set in stone, but this is what some of the projects I'm most excited about casting on in 2023 right now. And I won't hold myself to this because knitting is fun, and I'm really just, I want to knit to have a good time. So starting with number one is the Olas shorts, a pattern by Marianne J. Bjerkman. And they are these sweet little, they're like little short overalls for baby. They're just so cute with all these little buttons all over them. I had a little panic the other day because the pattern is in the description. It says that it's only available in Norwegian at the moment, and if you watched my previous my knitting 2022 video, year of knit, whatever it's called, I do translate patterns if I like them, but I also don't want to do that right now. It's like not my top priority at 40 weeks pregnant. So I was happy to see that actually the pattern is available in English. So I'll just be able to download and knit it. And you knit the pattern, looks like the biggest needle size is 4 millimeters, and you hold fingering weight yarn double. So my yarn for that project is Cascade 220 Superwash fingering, and I have a few balls of it, but this is, the color is Tuffet, I believe. I have it all caked up because honestly I've been thinking that I would cast this on I was thinking I would cast it on maybe a little sooner than I have, but this will definitely be one of my next two casts on. So I have 3 balls. Here they all are. I think I mentioned this before, but Cascade 220 Superwash yarn is really, really soft. When I got it, I touched it and I was like, whoa, I could knit with this. So yeah, that is one of my first projects, hopefully, for January 2023. Next up, I have the Verso. This is a pattern by the Petite Knitter. She recently re-released this pattern. I guess reworked it and re-released it. And it is, and I bought it. She was running a sale, and I thought, you know what, this looks like a really cool basic hat. And it's done in double knitting. I took a look at the pattern. It's done in double knitting, which, if you haven't done it, it's kind of hard to explain, but essentially you're knitting a two-layered hat, but the inside and the outside are knit in separate colors, but at the same time. So this is a technique you can use for color work as well. I've never come across a pattern that does double knitting color work, but I'd definitely be, if this goes well, I'd be interested to try it in the future. But yeah, I thought the hat was super cool, really nice basic way to use a couple balls of yarn that were similar, but not necessarily the same color, which as a thrift yarn buyer, I have a lot of yarn like that. So the yarn that I'm planning on using is called Laine de Pingouin Fleur de Laine. You can tell I don't speak French. But there are these two balls. They are vintage. I'm not sure if they're discontinued or not. I'll have to check. But I have one in gray and one in blue. They're both 100% wool. I do believe that they are an Aran weight rather than a worsted, which it's a hat, so I'm really not concerned about that. I probably won't even gauge swatch. If it ends up being too big, I'll give it to someone who has a bigger head than me. So these two for the Verso Hat by Petite Knitter. And that one, yeah, that should be a fun knit. I'm always excited to try new techniques. So double knitting, but on like a very low stakes item, and a low stakes, like, or it's not a difficult pattern to do other than that specific technique. Next up, oh my gosh, I forgot to grab the yarn. I'm gonna go get it. Okay, here we go. Next up is the Magic Toadstool Socks by Stone Knits. These ones, you might have seen them around. They're, I think, pretty popular. They are I would say like a basic color work. I just forgot the term color work, stranded color work sock. That they've got these cute little mushrooms on it. And yeah, so it's just color work band at the top and then one down again at the toes. So I feel pretty comfortable with color work after the last pair of socks that I knit. So I am thinking that this will be a good cast on to do when I have a newborn or shortly after, and just like do the color work parts when I'm feeling up to it, and then the rest is just going to be plain stockinette, which seems very, very manageable. So the yarn that I'm planning on using is Little Lionhead BFL Tweed Fingering. And I did show this in another video, my January knitting video. This was an acquisition. I'm sorry, I'm like gonna try to show all of the colors at once. But it is a like a nice, what do we got? 85% superwash merino, 15% Donegal, nope, I don't know. I think it's maybe the tweedy bits. But yeah, it's this green tweed and then like a rusty color, orange or red, and then a nice taupe beige color. And it came with this Knitting Nelly project bag, and they all match perfectly. So very excited to knit socks in my matching from my matching project bag. Um, and I do think in this pattern, I will, these red colorwork motifs on the, like above and below the mushroom, I think I am gonna knit them in the beige yarn just to make them stand out a bit, because looking through the various projects, when they're knit in the red color, the same color as the mushrooms, I don't know, like they don't pop as much. So that's my plan for those ones. But yeah, here we go. We got a pair of socks in the list. All right, next up is a cardigan. So this is the Kingston Cardigan by Taylor Owen. I believe that she also has a YouTube podcast that I've just completely blanked on the name of. But it's this cool raglan. It's like a top-down raglan cardigan with it's got a cable detail at the sleeve here that then joins together under the arm and goes down the side of the cardigan. And it's nice cropped cardigan, knit in, I believe, a worsted, yeah, calls for worsted weight. And I have this yarn from, it was from an estate sale that my mom went to, and she saw the yarn and she called me and she was like, yo, she didn't say that. She doesn't talk like that. But she was like, I think maybe you want this yarn. And I said, yeah, I do. So it's called Cape Cod, Lion Brand Cape Cod, and it is 100% wool, and it's in this like teal, nice teal color, which I think is a good color on me. And there was a ton of it, so there was just like absolute masses of it, which is rare to find. She grabbed it for me. I think she paid, I want to say $5 for the whole thing, for the whole lot. And I thought that I'd have enough to knit like a sweater or um, I thought it might be enough to knit a sweater for my husband. And then I calculated the yardage and it certainly was not. So I am going to knit a cardigan for me, and unfortunately it is gonna only do a cropped cardigan. So the Kingston cardigan is a bit cropped and will work well for that yarn. Next up is going to be the Casual Top by Naked Knit. If you're familiar with Naked Knit, they're a designer that does mostly like lingerie, knit lingerie patterns. So I have never knit any of their patterns before, but this one I liked a lot. It seemed like a nice, depending on the opacity of the finished garment, it seems like a nice base layer, or you could potentially wear it with like tank top underneath. It just depends on how see-through it ends up being. The two here are very different, in the two samples, very different. And I honestly have no idea how mine will turn out, but my plan is to knit it with this. It's the Little Wool Company, and it's a giant ball or hank of, I think it's 1,000 yards. And it's 70% wool, 30% silk. And you can see based on my little tags there, I did get it for $20 at a thrift store. Apparently it is made in New Zealand. And it's nice. It's like really, really soft. I love this color. The color is sage. And I'm really excited. It's a lace weight. Lace weight yarn, which is what the pattern calls for. Uh, I I guess I don't have too many fingering weight ones yet, but there's a lot more on my list that are fingering weight. So this is gonna be maybe a little intense year of knitting if I'm only knitting fingering weight and lace weight patterns. Speaking of, this next one is lace weight and well, it's two lace weights held together, so I guess that counts as fingering. But it is the Ovis Socks by the Petite Knitter, and it's these adorable little socks with sheep, and then a bunch of other color work as well. But the sheep are running across the top, and as knitters, I think we're required to love sheep. So I saw this pattern. I know she has a sweater, and I don't remember if she released the socks for the sweater first with the same kind of motif, but I saw one of them and I went, I have to do it. So for this pattern, I actually have the recommended yarn, which this might be the first time I'll ever knit any pattern with the recommended yarn. I'm always substituting, getting something else, but I've got Istek Slopey Einband, which is a lace weight. Lace weight, and I've got it in chocolate and white. So this one's chocolate and this one's white. And because I have all of the recommended yarns for the whole pattern, which truly wild, I have Knitting for Olive, soft silk, mohair in cream, and dark mousse. So that's what they'll look like together. I mean, I'm so excited. I'm pretty sure I've never knit with the recommended yarn any patterns, so this will be a super fun experience for me. And I really like colorwork socks. They're very addictive because you just want to get to the next row of colorwork and can't stop. So yes, that one was number 6. Number 7 is the Knut Body by Rillerund, and I've knit a number of Rillerund patterns. I really like their patterns for kids, which I believe is mostly the patterns that they're doing. But it's this little again, if you watch my knitting 2022 video, I knit a lot of baby clothes, and they're all for super warm weather. And we live in Sacramento. It's really hot here most of the year. And I was like, oh no, I've knitted too many things that are for the warm or for the cold season. And so I decided to knit this pattern, which I think is so adorable. It's like a little jumpsuit, and the yarn that it calls for is dollar garn, but I am going to knit it in haiku, Kobasi haiku, and it is, as you can see on the tags, maybe you can't, it is a blend of cotton, bamboo, and silk. So I'm going to try to hit the 6-month size with this because that should be about midsummer. And I've got, this is iris blue and this is white. So it'll be mostly in the iris blue with white stripes. And I'm hoping it'll be really cute and a bit cooler. I've heard good things about this blend of yarn, that it's like stretchy, so hopefully it's not as miserable to knit as most cotton yarns are. And yeah, hopefully we get a super cute summer baby knit. Just one out of my many, many baby knits. Next up is another camisole. This is the camisole number 1 by My Favorite Things Knitwear. Obviously, My Favorite Things Knitwear is super popular designer, and I had some yarn in stash that I was just like, what am I going to do with this? And then I was looking at the yardage that I had and the quality of it, and sorry, I keep some of my yarn in like a veggie bag to keep it together. These balls in particular are trying to fall apart. But it is this vintage Lanes de Penguin, French, atoll. And I have 4 balls of it. It's kind of shiny and it's got little nibbies in it. It is cotton and viscose. So I should have just enough. I think I'm planning on holding it double. I'm now forgetting. But yeah, that is my plan for this yarn, to do the camisole number 1, the first ever camisole. I love some of My Favorite Things other camisoles, but this one, we're going basic. We're going number 1. That yarn is a mess. Okay, next up we have 2 patterns that use well, that will be used. This is not the recommended yarn for either of them, but I got one more. I got what I thought was a sweater's quantity. It was a lot on eBay of Swan's Island Natural Colors Collection fingering. And this is in russet. It's beautiful. I'm not sure. I hope it's light enough to pick up on the beautiful variation in the yarn, but it's like this brown with some red that comes through it. All their yarn is naturally dyed. Everything's 100% organic. It's merino yarn. So if you didn't watch my previous videos, Swan's Island, this yarn specifically is my favorite. So I got this whole lot, and I thought that it would be a sweater's quantity, and it turns out it's more than a sweater's quantity. Each ball or each skein has 525 yards. So it's a whole chunk of yarn. And my plan is to knit the Colding by Chris Berlin. This is like a woolfolk pattern. and obviously they call for you to use Woolfolk yarn in it. Probably Swans Island and Woolfolk yarn are around the same price range, but since I got this on eBay, it was about, I would say 50% or more reduced in price. So it was a great deal. But the Colding is a giant, absolutely massive. I would call it a scarf. It's not triangular, but it does kind of go out in the middle. So maybe it's a shawl. And it has this one end that is a contrasting color. So I haven't decided. Lots of the projects will just knit it all in one color that I've seen on Ravelry. I haven't decided if I want to do that contrasting color. But it looks like a super interesting scarf pattern to knit. I'm knitting a scarf now that is definitely very complex and interesting, but it's the same the whole way through. So I'm like getting stalled out on it. But this one looks like it'll be super interesting to do because it keeps changing throughout. It goes from like ribbing to like some lace to stockinette and then brioche, and then if I do the colorwork section, I believe that's done in intarsia, which I have not done before. So lots to look at in that pattern. And then the next pattern that I'm planning on making with this yarn, same yarn, is Primavera by Rachel Ilsley. And I know that Rachel Ilsley has a designer name that I'm not seeing here, but I'll put it up on the screen. And yeah, so this is a fingering weight colorwork sweater. So I'm talking about this is going to be the year of fingering weight patterns. And it's just got this amazing colorwork pattern on it. So I couldn't say no. I don't have the yarn yet, the contrasting yarn yet for the sweater. I'm hoping to pick up some either from my local yarn store or from like a indie dyer. I'm thinking I'll go either in like a cream, maybe with brown flecks, or a pink. But I'm hoping to get a little bit of variegation. The Swans Island obviously has quite a bit of variegation. Again, I'm not sure if it's picking up. But yeah, I think it'll be really, really beautiful. Look at this, I'm running out of space in my yarn basket. Okay. Hopefully I don't have too many more sweater quantities to fit in there. All right. Next up, I did talk about previously, and this is another one I actually have the recommended yarn for, which I'm like, ah! And it is the Baby Bear Suit by Knitting for Olive. Super cute. A full body suit with bear ears. It's I believe the shaping is the same as the Baby Bear bonnet, which I have also knit. So hopefully that'll be pretty straightforward, and then you just knit a full suit. So I want to have this for next fall. I'm thinking it'll be the perfect combination of a Halloween costume and a super warm suit that baby can wear all winter, hopefully. So I will be knitting like the 1 year size. But I have this beautiful Knitting for Olive heavy merino in hazel that my brother gifted me for Christmas. He went to the Knitting for Olive shop in Copenhagen and picked this up, which one day I'll get to go to the Knitting for Olive shop and buy yarn in luxury. Okay, fit, squeeze. Okay, So that's a baby bear suit. Next is Tarmac. This is another camisole pattern, Tarmac by Anna Maltz, and this one is published in a pom-pom magazine. I'm not sure which one. So the yarn that I'm going to use is another Swan's Island yarn that I got on eBay. It was a super discounted lot. It is a silk and merino blend. So it's called Swan's Island Natural Colors Merino Silk Lace. This color is Iris. And this color is Fog. This yarn is discontinued. They no longer make this blend of yarn, which is too bad because it's like, I don't know, it's really nice. It's got a great feel. It's also 550 yards per skein, so quite a lot, but it is it's 50 merino and 50 tussa silk, and it is lace weight. So more fingering and lace weight patterns for me. A little more about the pattern. It is kind of I guess I would call it like a peplum, or it's loose at the bottom, and it's got these stripes that just end up looking really, really cool. The yarn that is recommended also looks awesome, but I love Swan's Island, and I got that yarn for pretty cheap, so I'm planning on using that. Next up is the whimsical sock collective sock number 1. I believe it's by Melody Hoffman, who I absolutely stan. Melody Hoffman on YouTube. Oh my gosh. If you haven't watched her videos, her YouTube name is Mandarins, I believe. They are the most stunning videos that you have ever seen. This will be my first pattern of hers that I've knit, and it's these socks. They're thick, and they've got this cute little shaping on the top that is meant to look like a tulip. She has a sweater called the tulip sweater that has that same design on the bottom ribbing of the sweater. And again, I have the recommended yarn for this one. So I have, I believe it's the recommended yarn, or maybe she calls for new to den. No. So this is Eastex Plutulopi, and I believe this is Ivory Heather or Ivory Beige. I don't have Ivory Beige. I have it in my Ravelry. And then I'm going to pair it with Knitting for Olive soft silk mohair in cream. So that should look really, really nice together. And I think it'll be similar to the colors that she used for hers. Can we squeeze? Yes. So yeah, I'm excited to have those really, really thick, warm socks in my wardrobe. Next up is another pattern that I have the main color of yarn for, but I'm still looking for the contrasting color. And this one is the Pressed Flowers Cardigan by Amy Christoffers, which is a super popular pattern. There's a shawl and the cardigan with the same motif. And it's tapestry color work. The yarn I have for this one, this was another eBay buy, currently discontinued, and it is called Heirloom Heatherwood. So it's a DK weight yarn, or no, it's sport weight, which is what the pattern calls for, I believe. And it's in this nice beige. I feel like it'll be the perfect basic backdrop for this pattern. And the like the yarn for the flowers I don't have yet. So I'm thinking I might use Malabrigo Arroyo, or I might end up later splurging on some Spin Cycle or something like Spin Cycle, which is what the pattern calls for. I don't know. It's so hard. I've run out of room, so I'm gonna just stack these nearby. Here we go. But yeah, that I'm gonna have to probably shorten up the body and the sleeves a bit because I'm a little bit light on yardage for that pattern, but we'll see. Okay, the last one that I have the yarn for is the Harbor Highlights cardigan, and this is a Drops design studio pattern. I have in my stash a bunch of this. It's called Cascade Cherub Aran, and it's nylon and acrylic yarn, so it's not super, I don't love it, but it's great for babies. And I have some friends who are going to be having babies this year, and I'm thinking of doing some gift knitting for them. We'll see how it goes with my own newborn. But I am pretty excited about this pattern. It's a brioche cardigan, and it's got super cute little design at the bottom. And yeah, I think it'll be awesome. So that was the 15 projects that I have yarn for. And then number 16, I'm thinking of it as kind of like a bonus because this is a pattern that I really want to knit. It is called Paper Houses by Chantal Belle, maybe is the pronunciation there. And this one was published in Pom Pom. And it's this, what I would describe it as a wearable blanket. So it's knit in triangles, and you knit it from the middle out modularly, and you always attach it to your last things that you've knit, and you end up with this absolutely massive blanket with armholes so that you could stick your arms through and wear it like a poncho blanket thing. And I know a lot of people talk about the half and half wrap being a super awesome pattern for like comfort knitting. Just something you can pick up. It's garter, it's super basic construction. And I feel like this pattern will be essentially that, but on a much larger scale. This is something that I expect to take me multiple years. It's definitely going to be my scrap yarn, fingering weight scrap yarn project. And I've started collecting some yarn for it. I'm just going to show it in the bag because there's lots of different skeins that I've thrifted or I got in destashes, and then there's little scraps in there as well from other projects I've worked on. And so at some point this year, I do want to cast this on and start working on it. I'm thinking this will also be a great project for an advent calendar because I believe you only need 80 yards or around 80 to 90 yards of each yarn to make a triangle in in the wearable blanket. So I believe most 20-gram skeins have at least that much. So I've never gotten an Advent before. They're so tempting, but also such an investment. So maybe this will be the year that I get an Advent to kind of bulk out my paper houses, wearable blanket. Anyways, so that is the 15 projects I'm most excited to cast on this year, plus one bonus one, which will be a multi-year scrap busting, single skein busting project, hopefully. Um, Thank you so much for joining and listening. I hope that maybe you heard about some new patterns, maybe got inspired to go out and thrift some yarn. I highly recommend it. I showed you probably about half of my stash. Yeah, that probably makes up about half my stash. So that gives you an idea of how big my stash is. I'm not sure if I should be worried or not. It's not that bad, I don't think. But yeah, thanks for joining. If you want, please like and subscribe, and hopefully I'll be seeing you sometime. I'm not making any promises in my current overdue state, but thanks again for joining, and have a great day.